Welcome to the second annual Economic Update Luncheon, co-hosted by the Greater Chattanooga Association of Realtors and the Home Builders Association of Greater Chattanooga. I'm Vicki Trapp, President of the Greater Chattanooga Association of Realtors. Just take a look around here. We have a great crowd here today. We have more than 150 practitioners from the industry, including the home builders, realtors, and several persons from affiliated businesses and the community. Thank you all for being here for what I know is going to be an interesting presentation from Dr. Lawrence Yoon, whom I will introduce in a few minutes. First, I want to recognize the leadership from our two co-hosting associations. I ask that you hold your applause until all the names are called. If you will please stand when I call your name and remain standing. Representing the Greater Chattanooga Association of Realtors, we have Travis Close, President-elect, Byron Kelly, President of the Multiple Listing Service, Robert Fisher, Treasurer, Carol Seal, Executive Officer, and without naming them all individually, I also would like to recognize and ask to stand all the other officers and directors for the association and the Multiple Listing Service. Please stand. Yay! There they are. Thank you. You may be seated. Representing the Home Builders Association of Greater Chattanooga, if you will please stand when I call your name and remain standing, we have Ethan Collier, President, Wynn Pratt, President-elect, Mike Croxall, Secretary, Chris Mabey, Treasurer, Teresa Groves, Executive Officer. And again, without naming them all individually, I also would like to recognize and ask to stand all of the officers and directors for the Home Builders Association. Please stand. There you go. There you go. Thank you. You may be seated. Today's luncheon would not have been possible without the support of our sponsors. Hopefully you had the opportunity to speak with them as you arrived today. If the following sponsors will please stand and be recognized. Suzanne Reed with the Hamilton County Herald, Dan Mayfield with Housemaster Home Inspections, Herb Pettit with SunTrust Mortgage, Katie Moore with Tennessee Housing Development Authority. Thank you, Katie, Herb, Dan, and Suzanne. We really appreciate all you do for both of our associations and for being partners with us, especially today. If you did not have a chance to speak with our sponsors before lunch, please make an effort to go by and see them. They will be in the hallway right across from the sign-in tables after the program. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I would like to ask Teresa Groves to come to the podium for a brief announcement.
Hopefully when you arrived, you may have received tickets. The Home Builders Association, along with the Remodelers Council, is hosting the Fall Home and Remodeling Expo that's going to be next weekend, August 23rd and 24th at the Chattanooga Convention Center. We would like to invite everyone to attend. You may have customers, clients that are looking at buying a home that may need to have repairs or want to update a kitchen or do something to the house. Or maybe your customer is trying to sell their home but needs some updates to the house. This is a great place to find all the products and services, talk to remodelers or builders. Everything will be under one roof. So if you did not receive your free ticket, there should be some outside. And if you need more, I think the Realtors have tickets, or we have some at the Home Builders Association.
Thank you, Teresa. Now, for the man we all came to hear today, Dr. Lawrence Yoon. Dr. Yoon is Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Research at the National Association of Realtors. He oversees and is responsible for a wide range of research activity for the association, including NAR's existing home sales statistics, affordability index, and home buyers and sellers profile report. Dr. Yoon creates NAR's forecasts and participates in many economic forecasting panels, among them Blue Chip and the Harvard University Industrial Economist Council. He appears regularly on financial news outlets, is a frequent speaker at real estate conferences throughout the United States, and has testified before Congress. In 2008, USA Today listed him among the top 10 economic forecasters in the country, and he has been named among the most influential real estate leaders by Inman News over the past several years. Dr. Yoon received his undergraduate degree from Purdue University and earned his PhD from the University of Maryland at College Park. Please join me with a Greater Chattanooga Greater Chattanooga welcome for Dr. Lawrence Yoon. Thank you, sir. I'm going to turn this off. Okay, you got it?
Very glad to be here as I am putting on my lavalier microphone. This is my first visit to Chattanooga. This morning I took a little stroll from here all the way to the waterfront. Very nice. In fact, I was surprised to see a bike share program, which means that I think Chattanooga is looking forward to the future in terms of bringing many millennial younger generation closer to the town, make it more livelier. The university is expanding, looks like rapid pace. And furthermore, Volkswagen, I think that's a very good sign. I was born in South Korea. Okay, first want to make sure I turn it on right. Testing. Okay, sorry about that little static noise. So I was born in South Korea, but came to the States at a very young age with a family, and we settled in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, I somehow lost the Southern accent, but because I followed the Southern college football closely. But the thing is that I am also well attuned to what's happening in South Carolina in terms of their manufacturing industry revival. BMW plant is certainly making the upstate in South Carolina very vibrant. And with the Volkswagen here now becoming the anchor right here in Chattanooga, I think this will be a further basis for further expansion, perhaps not only in the auto industry, but in other places. Because what happens is that they generally draw high-skilled workers to the area. And once you have a set of high-skilled workers, then as other companies begin to think about where do they want to go, where is it business-friendly, cost-effective, and also a good skilled labor. And so Volkswagen has already, in a sense, made that turning point. So I think you have a very, very bright future ahead. I've been to other parts of Tennessee as well. Nashville is booming. A very similar situation. Many companies coming to Nashville. Nissan plants expanding. Again, further drawing skilled labor. With skilled labor coming, other industry also wants to come in. So you can, again, accelerate that process. So very good news. And to see the bike share program, I was especially excited. And the reasoning for that is that I'm from Washington, and I'm glad I'm out of Washington today. But in Washington, I have an option. They also have a bike share program, and I actually ride bike if the day is nice. And it takes me only 30 minutes to commute riding the bicycle compared to anywhere from 30 minutes to 1 hour if I was to drive. So the fact that I think that's also a very good symbolism about how Chattanooga is positioning for the future. I'm here to discuss the real estate market. And the real estate market right now is a little static noise, so maybe I would just use this microphone. Okay, so the real estate market is that right now is at a same situation, I think. So since I prefer walking around, let me go back to the other way. Okay, so the real estate market is that we have had 2 years of a very decent recovery. So 2012 was an improvement from 2011. 2013 was a further improvement. So it was continuing improvement. Then in the past 6 months, or late last year and early part of this year, somehow everything began to slow down. So we had a good momentum, but suddenly there was a slowdown in activity. In some markets, there was a reasoning for it. Prices were rising very rapidly in some places. In Phoenix, prices rising close to 30% in a 1-year time span. This is after a big crash, but prices rising 30% in a single year can certainly deter some buyers from entering the market, or some people are priced out. Chattanooga, that's not the case. Yet you also saw the slowdown situation. The other market also experienced inventory declines. I remember one realtor who has been in the business for close to 30 years, and he said he has never seen this in his professional career. He's from the Boston area. Of course, he sells across Boston, but he specializes in this one subdivision neighborhood where everyone knows him. So that's where his bulk of his business is coming from, this neighborhood. He said, this particular neighborhood which I specialize in, there is 0 inventory. Never seen that in his professional life. Well, with 0 inventory, there will be 0 transactions. So another reason for the slowdown in some sales activity was inventory shrinkage. Then I look at Chattanooga statistics, and you do have declining in inventory, but you don't have anything that comes to acute shortage situation. You still have a relatively plentiful inventory. So inventory is not the reason. So something else must have really triggered as to why sales are soft. In other areas, I could understand, fast rising prices, shortage of inventory, but in Chattanooga, it also experienced some soft patch, soft slowdown, but it's hard to explain particular reasoning for that. So let me just go over some of the data and give you some of my conjectures as to why it may have occurred, and also explain, based on other dynamics that is happening to the economy, what you may anticipate going forward. Now, there is a market developments, job creation, interest rate changes, but for our industry, real estate industry, another thing that we have to be very mindful of is some of the changes they are discussing in Washington that could potentially impact in a measurable way to the real estate going forward. It's not going to be this year, that this is an election year, and it's clear that we will not introduce any controversial measures this year, but after the election, everything is open, and there will be some policy changes that may be introduced that could have a meaningful impact to the industry. So let's look at the data. This is a national statistics. I also have some local statistics. So one thing on the national part is that there was a bubble, too many buyers coming in. Hindsight is always 20/20, so we know that we cannot give easy mortgages for anyone who wants it. So we had a crash, subsequently unsustainable, but the pendulum completely swung the other way in terms of mortgage availability. So first it was completely lax, now it is overly stringent, all the indication is overly stringent. Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen is indicating that it is a too tight market in terms of mortgage availability. So we had this slowdown for the from 2008 all the way to 2011. Then 2012, things began to pick up. Same thing in Chattanooga. 2012, things began to pick up. 2013, nationally, again, it picked up. Same situation in Chattanooga, things were picking up. This is an annual data. And with the buyers coming in, it also began to raise prices on a national level. Now, this is a 20% price gain nationwide. In Chattanooga, it's not that amount. It's more in the single-digit amount because you have, again, plentiful inventory situation. You don't have the acute shortage. But the price decline situation clearly ended as the buyers started coming back to the market. So it was just just a degree of price increase, how much certain markets were experiencing. When we look at the monthly data, so this is monthly, so it's been a 2-year expansion from here all the way to this point. 2-year expansion in terms of people coming in, signing contracts to buy home. Now, not all pending contracts eventually turn into closings, as you know, but this is a good indicator about the buyer activity. But things began to turn soft patch. But the good sign is that in the past 3-4 months, things began to reverse itself and go higher. So implying that the downturn appears to be over. Now the question remains about the recovery. Is it going to be a strong recovery or is it going to flatten out? But at least the downturn appears to be over regarding the pending contract situation. Local area market statistics is that 2014, year to date, you are down 4.5%. But look at the June figure. June of this year versus June of last year, you are up, implying that the first quarter or first half was weak, but it looks like going into the second half, the momentum is developing to make it a much better second half compared to last year. Prices year to date is actually up nicely, close to 7%, even though the price increase in June was much lower compared to 1 year before, which is implying that maybe it's the lower end starter homes that is getting all the pickup in activity, and therefore it's not picking up the prices. Yeah, I don't like that when that happens in front of a large audience. So it looks like the slowdown is coming to an end. So, because there was a concern in the early part of the year when things were slow and soft, because housing is one of the most cyclical industry in the country. It goes down, it goes up, but when it goes up, generally it tends to be a multi-year phenomenon. This is a unit sales. So one can look at about 1968, all the way to 1978, a 10-year growth in home sales. And then you had about 8-year growth in home sales in the mid-80s. And then you had about almost 13-year growth from the 1990s all the way to 2005. So generally, when there is a recovery, it tends to be a multi-year recovery. So when we had this 2-year recovery and saw a soft patch, was it going to be a 2-year and out, which would be highly unusual? Or is it the case that it's going to be a 2-year recovery, 1 year, just a little slight pause, and then we are set for further recovery going forward? So this chart is just to illustrate, if it's only a 2-year recovery, it will be highly unusual. Because generally, when there is a recovery, it tends to be a multi-year recovery. So what are some causes of the slowdown that occurred in the first quarter, first half of the year? Well, bad winter may be one of the reasons. When things are cold, snowy, people don't want to go outside. If it's bad winter, I mean, it happened all the way across, all through the South, Birmingham, Atlanta, And so bad winter just means that, well, first quarter was bad, but it is just a delayed transaction. It's nothing to be concerned about. It's just a delay. People who wanted to buy in February, if they cannot do so, they will just buy in May. It's just a delayed transaction. The other reason could be that home prices rose too fast, but this is not the case in Chattanooga. Lack of inventory, this is not the case here locally. The other part is the mortgage rate jump. Well, what do I mean by mortgage rate jump? Mortgage rates for most of last year was about 3.8% or so average. Average rate, 3.8%. By the way, 3.8%, no economist projected that. It was unimaginable low rates. Then, about this time last year, mortgage rate made a sudden jump up to about 4.8%. And then since that, it steadily has come down. Today is about 4.1% average, but it made that 1 percentage point jump. Anyone who has been in the industry for at least a decade would know that 4.8% mortgage rate, wow, this is a great rate. However, this is not how your clients see it. Your clients have short-term memory. Only short-term memory, and what your clients remember is that their friends and colleagues and family members had locked in rates at 3.8%. At 4.8%, they feel jealous, a certain level of envy, and wondering, can it go back down? Maybe I don't want to make the decision now at 4.8%, I just don't want to see if it can go down a little further. Well, rates have come down to now 4.1%, so maybe that's the result of that is why we are beginning to see, say, June figures being better than before. However, this decline in rates that we have experienced in recent months, again, from 4 so initially when it jumped from 3.8 to 4.8, it shocked people, and people said, no way I want to buy a home at this high 4.8%. But now the rates have come down, now people have come back, but this is a complete surprise because most economists, including myself, I would say not most, nearly all economists were projecting even higher rates. I'm glad that I am wrong on this part because lower rate is always helpful for the industry, but the lower rate has been surprising. Even the Fed chairperson, Janet Yellen, is constantly in her speeches is saying we are no longer in the ultra loose monetary policy. We will have to raise interest rates sometimes next year. We will have to end easy money policy later this year. All indication pointing toward rising interest rates. Now, there could be some other reasons as to why the rates are low. Maybe there's a global uncertainty. Anytime there's a global uncertainty, people want to put their money in the most safest asset, which is the US Treasury. And if that's the case, automatically brings the mortgage rate down. Maybe that's the reason temporarily as to why the rates are down. But without a doubt, next year, mortgage rates will be higher. Now, I think I'm more certain of that forecast than the forecast that I made about mortgage rate 1 year ago, which I thought, again, would be higher now. Because the Fed will be raising interest rates automatically, the Fed funds rate. And there are other indications to say that Federal Reserve may have to make their decision on higher rates sooner rather than later. So anyway, mortgage rate was one of the reasons for slowdown, but mortgage rate will be rising. So this is one thing you need to explain to your clients is that jealous and envy game. When my friend had 3.8%. Well, you counter that by showing all the statement from the Federal Reserve, their interest rate policy forecast going forward, which is they will be raising rates. And as an industry practitioner, you know that 4.8% is a very, whatever interest rate today is a great bargain. Because 1 year from now, most likely you will be higher. 2 years from now, even higher. 3 years from now, even higher, because we are in a rising interest rate environment. So the proper comparison is not with the past, recent past, but the proper comparison is with the future, what's kind of likely to happen, likely to occur in the future. Other reason for slowdown is the continuing tight underwriting standards. There's a new mortgage rule that came out early this year, part of the Dodd-Frank legislation, something called qualified mortgages. And this has led to many lenders readjusting what they can lend. In the past, you had a situation where lenders, they determined the risk criteria and said, well, this person we can lend to because we can make profit from this person. This other person we don't want to lend to because this other person will most likely not repay back. Therefore, we don't want to take that risk. So lenders made that decision. Well, what the new qualified mortgage rule is saying is the following. There's this various guideline, like 43% debt to income ratio and other just hard number criteria. But the way the law was set up was to say that if the lender makes the loan and the consumers default, government can sue the lenders. So if this is a lawsuit threat over the lenders, they want to play extra conservative about how they want to lend, because the last thing they want is to be sued by the government. So that may be one of the reasons why mortgage availability still remain exceptionally tight, even though all indication is that people who are getting mortgages in recent years, they are one of the most successful homeowners. They're all repaying the mortgages on time, yet the lenders are very, very hesitant about slightly opening that dial from the threat of lawsuit that may be on the way. So just graphically, mismatch between home price and income. This is nationwide, but not here locally. The price changes has been rapidly rising, but look at the blue line that is coming deceleration. This is NAR data. The other data is Case-Shiller and CoreLogic, which is still showing about 10% price increase from 1 year before. Only reason why I illustrate this is that your consumers may be reading newspapers or seeing on CNN to say, I heard Case-Shiller prices are rising 10%. But you have to explain that it is a lagging indicator. They're only looking at what happened in March versus March of last year. So that some homeowners that you are trying to list that price, they may get the wrong impression to say, maybe I should bump up the price by 10% before I list it. But it's a lagging indicator because more recent data is suggesting that prices are up only about 4% higher from 1 year before. So you have to always be mindful of what's happening more recently. And this is also a national statistics, local statistics. You have access to those reports. But your consumers sometimes get tied up on what's been covered in the media about the Case-Shiller or CoreLogic, and they may have a wrong perception of the current market conditions. This is the interest rate conditions. So the blue line is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which is what most people are taking. Very few people are taking the adjustable rate mortgages, but note that the gap has widened, which means that some people who are buying those expensive homes, they may want to try the adjustable rate mortgages because it makes the financing easier, but they are taking on risk of rising rates in the future. But at least right now, because the gap has opened up, some of the people who are taking out a larger size mortgages may be wanting to do the adjustable rate mortgages. The price situation, looking at the repeat price index, there's two markets. Without labeling, I think you know which one is which. So Las Vegas, huge bubble, huge crash, and now they're recovering. But the market in Chattanooga, very, very steady. So maybe very, very modest decline, and now beginning to turn slightly upward in the data. This is also a little bit of a lagging indicator. Median price, again, median price is already showing good mid-single digit rate of appreciation locally. Inventory of homes, falling, falling, and falling. And in some places, zero inventory. The zero inventory you don't want to ever encounter. But the thing on inventory is that now we are beginning to see slight uptick in inventory. And this is not a seasonal uptick. It's comparing, say, May of this year versus May of last year. It's a little better. More inventory. June versus June of last year, more inventory. July versus July of last year, more inventory. So consistently, we are beginning to see a little more inventory. And this trend should continue because one source of inventory is home building, and home building is steadily coming around. It's not back to normal by any means, but home building industry is steadily coming around. Some people say, well, the visible inventory is very low. Homes through MLS or homes that is for sale by the home builders is very low. But what about the shadow inventory? Those homes that is not yet on the market, but will surely appear on the market. Shadow inventories are those homes that is in foreclosure process, but not yet an REO. Or property that has been missing mortgage payments for several months. And surely these homeowners will eventually go into foreclosure. So what's happening on the shadow inventory? Well, it's falling. It peaked in Tennessee at 7%. Now it is at 4%, almost half the case. And almost reaching almost back to normal. Not yet completely back to normal, but reaching close to the normal levels, which means that don't expect inventory help from the shadow inventory. And also for some who specialize in short sales or foreclosure properties, you should anticipate there will be less business opportunity in that segment going forward. Also, another point is that this also means that median prices will be steadily rising just because you don't have that deep discount property competing in the marketplace to the degree that it has occurred. So let's go to the forecast, what you can anticipate. So I think I have 3 forecasts. So this is my first forecast. Expect higher inflation, and as a result of higher inflation, automatically higher interest rates next year and beyond. One, Federal Reserve has said they will end quantitative easing. So what is quantitative easing? Is printing a lot of money. I'm sure you have anecdotally heard that Federal Reserve is just printing money like crazy. And they have been printing money like crazy. And most of that money they have been buying U.S. Treasury. They've been using that to buy U.S. Treasury. But at some point you would have to say, something does not sound right. If Mexico prints a lot of money, they have inflation. If Argentina prints a lot of money, they have inflation. But in America, we print a lot of money, but we don't have inflation. Well, as long as we can contain it. But if we were to print money forever, surely inflation will come at some point. And also there's generally a lag time between printing money and when the inflation occurred. But Federal Reserve has said we're going to stop printing money, as we have been doing by probably October. Fed funds rate will be rising. My best guess is the first quarter of next year. Most economists are saying second quarter or third quarter of next year. I'm a little ahead in that forecast because I think the inflation will be surprisingly high for the Federal Reserve sooner than later. And Fed funds rate is not mortgage rate, but it's a signal for other interest rate. When the Federal Reserve raises that rate, then automatically other interest rates begin to rise as a result of that. And the other, so I think Federal Reserve will tighten because of inflationary pressure, and eventually the 10-year Treasury will probably go up to 5%, which means it will be double of what it is now. And hence that 5% mortgage rate will be probably something closer to about 6.5% by 2016 and onwards. So again, we're in a rising interest rate environment. So the proper reference point, comparison point is not with a recent past, but with a future. Longer person waits, more likely the case they will face higher interest rates. Home buying is a major decision for most families, the highest expenditure they ever made. You never want to rush them. You want to make the home buyer feel very comfortable in their decision. But one of the factors that you take into consideration is that, well, interest rate will be higher later. I mean, this is just an objective observation, what the Federal Reserve is indicating. So that should be one of the considering factor to make that decision. But even though you don't want to rush the clients to say, buy sooner rather than later. Why do I anticipate higher inflation? Well, because the component related to housing inflation is rising quickly. People who are receiving Social Security checks, or your parents or your grandparents, last year, I think they got a 1.5% adjustment, cost of living adjustment, 1.5%. That's a very small amount. And the reason why it's a small amount is because inflation was low. They say inflation is low, you don't get a large adjustment. But that adjustment may have to increase because we are beginning to see pressure on the rents. Red line is how much the rents are rising. And rents are rising right now nationwide at about 3%, according to the government. Private sector data is implying that rents are rising at 4%. Rents in Nashville is rising very, very fast, but it has not yet spread to Memphis or Chattanooga, but in Nashville, rents are rising very fast in Nashville. So that's the rent. The blue line is hypothetical. Most of you are homeowners. So you have to do this mental gymnastics. Assume you were to rent out your home. How much rent would you charge? And how is that changing from one year to the next? So it's a mental exercise. You said, why do I need to do that? I never do that. And in fact, you don't do that, but someone in Washington does that for you. And they have come up with this blue line called owner equivalency rent. What would the homeowner charge in rent, and how is that changing from one year to the next? And they determine it is this blue line. But note that the blue line is below the red line, but it should not be below the red line consistently, because if the apartment rents are rising, then surely the homeowner equivalency rent should be something close to that. So once the blue line catch up with the red line, then you can have even higher inflationary pressure. Furthermore, all the apartment vacancy rates continue to decline. With job creations, vacancy rate continue to decline, which means that this red line will be further accelerating. So the housing component of inflation is already building, and it's already topping 3%. So consider, Federal Reserve like to see inflation rate at 1.5% or 2%. They don't want to see 3%. But the housing component is already above 3%. Now there are other things like electronic where prices are falling, or maybe price of clothes are falling, but the biggest component of the consumer price inflation is housing. And if somehow there's a reversal on energy prices, whether gasoline prices, heating oil prices, I think one could easily imagine that we could have this inflationary pressure building at 3% or higher, which will make Federal Reserve uncomfortable, and they will be forced to raise interest rates sooner rather than later. We also take survey of realtor members, just asking the question, in the neighborhood that you specialize, is the rents rising or falling? And you can see that rents, most people are saying rents are rising. We also ask question about the magnitude. Is it 1 to 2%, 3 to 4%, and so forth? And more people are indicating higher figures than now than before, which means that we are already getting signal from the realtor members that rents pressure is continuing to accelerate. So therefore, what the forecast is that next year, expect higher consumer price inflation of about 3.5%. This will exceed Federal Reserve's desired rate, which means they will have to raise interest rates sooner. And also for people on the Social Security check, they will get 3.5% adjustment in early 2016. So whatever happened in 2015, then in 2016 they will get this adjustment. So Social Security recipients, they are protected, but wages will not be rising at that rate. So people could be falling behind in terms of standard of living unless the wages catch up to that level. Regarding the economy, I don't see a recession occurring. Various factors, without going into details, companies are flush with cash. They're making good profits. We have now turned and we're re-entering the virtuous circle of job creation. Now with jobs, people spending money means more job creation. So I don't anticipate the economy to go into a recession. And also we are beginning to see improvement in consumer confidence. People need to have that confidence to make that big expenditure like automobile and houses. Second forecast is that I believe that we will face a multi-year housing recovery. It's not going to be to and out. It's going to be a multi-year recovery with this 1 year sort of pause. I mean, when I say pause, it's not like there's no buyers. It's almost same home sales this year as last year, and then beginning to improve. Why? We have a pent-up demand developing. There will be some underperformance compared to past multi-year recovery. So there will be a multi-year recovery, but not as strong as in the past. There will be some underperformance. And the inventory situation will improve, and the vacation home sales will also be improving. So this is the most boring chart in economics. U.S. population rises by 2 or 3 million each year. This combination of how many, the birth rate minus death rate and legal immigration. I don't want to discuss illegal immigration. So based on that, this is what you have regarding the population situation in the U.S. And compare year 2000 to what happened last year. Home sales were roughly similar, 5 million home sales. And you go to the very bottom part, population. There's 34 million additional people living in the country. Yet we have the same number of home sales. And you say there's some mismatch there. Furthermore, interest rates were much lower in 2013, yet home sales were something very similar. And 2000, is it a good comparison year, or maybe 2000 was a little flaky year? Well, I would say 2000 was a very good year to compare, not because it's a beginning of a new century or the end of the last century, whatever, however you want to view it. It's a very good year to compare because there was not an economist who in the year 2000 said anything about housing market bubble or housing market crash. Housing news was a very non-eventful news. Housing market was very boring. So it was a very normal time in the year 2000, and you compare the situation, and you said something is not aligning. We have so many additional people, yet home sales are only reaching the year 2000 level, which means that there is this pent-up demand. And pent-up demand, part of it is something that you have experienced, or you know that someone you know have experienced, which is we have a large population, but many of the young adults are living with parents, so they are not seeking their own household. But with continuing job creation, it's just inevitable that many young adults will go out on their own, initially in apartments and then eventually into ownership. So there is a pent-up demand that is developing, and this will be the source of that multi-year recovery. Economy has rebounded. I don't think there will be a recession, but it's been a little choppy, up, down, and not a consistent expansion. But because of the expansion that is still overall positive, we have recovered over 8 million jobs from the downturn. But only thing you need to be mindful of is that from 2008 all the way to now, job losses, job gains, but during this time span, high school graduates looking for jobs, college graduates looking for jobs. So we are only trading waters in a sense, and not adding jobs so that we can absorb the new workforce coming into the market. But the unemployment rate is coming down. Every time I show this chart, there's always hand goes up in the back. I don't know why it's in the back, but hand always goes up in the back to say that this data, don't trust this data because it doesn't include this, it include that, and so forth. So there is a mismeasurement regarding the true picture of the employment with unemployment rate because you have to be looking for a job. If you are not looking for a job, they don't count you. So if people are out of the workforce, then you are not counted as unemployed. And one of the studies that's coming out from one regional Federal Reserve Bank, I forget which one, Atlanta or St. Louis, but they're indicating that there has been a strong rise in disability payments. And people who goes on disability payments, they never return to the workforce pretty much. So so they're permanently out of the labor force. So this unemployment rate decline is partly reflecting that situation. Now, to get a cleaner measure, since there's an issue about people in the workforce or people not in the workforce, to get a cleaner measure, one can try to measure something called the employment rate. The employment rate is very simple. How many of the adult population have jobs and working? And this chart shows that before the recession, about 63% of the adults were working. Some adults were not working. Retirees are not working. Some housewives choose not to work. So you have certain segment of adult population not working. Then recession hit. And now ever since recession, even with 8 million jobs creation, we're still pretty much at the same. So only 58% of the adult population are working. So in a sense, from directional point of view, home building, home sales, jobs are being added, which means this is good news for home building and for home sales. But this growth in job is sluggish and slow and not able to lift this employment rate higher. Chattanooga situation looks like this. So this is total jobs. So there was this job, and then recession hit, major decline. Then ever since that, it's been rising. That little fluctuation is seasonal patterns. I think there's fewer winter jobs in the winter compared to the summer months. But overall, you are beginning to recover. But note that this is slight underperformance compared to the rest of the country, because the rest of the country, they saw a decline and they have now reached back to the prior peak, but not the case. When you look at Nashville, where things are much hotter in terms of home sales, rent growth, their job situation is far exceeding their prior peak. So job will determine what will happen to the overall real estate market conditions. So you are improving, but more sluggish compared to, say, Nashville situation. So here is Nashville. So this is what it looks like in Nashville, so which is the reason why they're much stronger. But given, again, the dynamics of, say, the Volkswagen, I think the overall potential, and the only thing I knew about Chattanooga, this is my first visit, is Chattanooga choo-choo. So you think about that with all the railroad, but this is the reason I think Volkswagen chose here, because global international trade will increase over time. That's just a definite. And the reason why Volkswagen preferred not producing in Germany and shipping over here and rather have a plant here is that it reduced their shipping costs. So if they're based here and they can sell in Atlanta, Nashville, whatever destination, it makes it easier to locate. So as if Volkswagen succeed, I think other companies will also begin to say, okay, which city in America I want to locate that is a good model for good distribution, easy distribution and transport. So anyway, you are recovering here. The recovery I mentioned is a multi-year recovery, but you will be slightly underperforming compared to the past because of something called a lock-in effect. Lock-in effect is people love their 3.8% mortgage rates. And they are saying, if I move, I have to give up 3.8% and I don't want to do so. So there will be some people who want to keep their low interest rates for a little longer period than before. But when I look at the data, I think this is chart. This is the reason why sellers move according to our survey of consumers, recent movers. So people move and we ask them, why did you move? And people are saying, well, home was too small. I have an additional kid. I need a larger size home. Or retirees saying, I don't need this large home. I want to downsize. Other people saying job relocation. Other people saying the neighborhood is deteriorating. I want to get out. Or other people are saying, I want to seek out better school district. Marriages, divorce, birth rate, moving due to retirement. So there's very little indication as to why the financial cost has been the reason why they wanted to move. There were these other life-changing events as to why they wanted to move. So mortgage rates will have some impact, but I don't think it will be a big impact. For this audience, I can just simply say that I was in a panel with the Economist group, with the Economist audience, and there was one professor from DePaul University, one economist from the New York Federal Reserve, and they were indicating that with 1% rise in mortgage rate, so going from 3.8 to 4.8, is going to reduce home sales, in their view analysis, by 30 or 40%. And I just don't think that will be the case, that interest rate rise, that is not going to be the case because of all these other factors as to why people move. But the true impact of the rising rates and lock-in effect, first, I think the reason is people have to move. So if they don't want to give up that 3.8%, what they will do is that they will keep it, but they will become a landlord and find a renter. So they will keep that 3.8%. So you may have some cases of unplanned landlords, home sellers, not willing to give up 3.8%, find a renter, cover the rent, rents easily, cover the mortgage payments, so that's part of their investment portfolio. But the true lock-in effect would be something like this. And I know the realtors and home builders are one of the more active in political arena, and people in Washington know that. So you have to keep reminding your congressman, congresswoman, that don't mess with tax code that is related to the home ownership. What is being discussed in Washington, quietly now, but actively next year, after the election, is that they want to extend this tax-free status of selling your home. Most people sell their home, and the capital appreciation is tax-free. Very, very few people would have a tax liability. Most people is tax-free. If you live in the home 3 out of 5 years, everyone knows that. But what's being discussed in Washington is that it's from both political parties. From Democrats who say we need to raise more tax revenue. From Republicans who want to reduce the number of tax loopholes. And what they're saying is, why 3 out of 5 years? Let's make it 5 out of 7 years or 6 out of 8 years. If they were to change into that, then you can easily see your client who possibly would move next year saying, wait a minute, you are telling me that if I stay in this home for 2 additional years, then I don't have to pay tax? Then I think people will stay 2 additional years. So the true lock-in effect would be changes in tax code, things that lengthen the tax-free status of selling a home. Because I think most people have this aversion to say, if I can control it, I don't want to pay any additional to Washington. So if I have to live 6 years, I'm going to live 6 years. So I think that will be the true lock-in effect. So we want to ensure that does not happen. So multi-year housing market recovery is first the pent-up demand, job creation, but the lock-in effect may minimize the performance of the recovery. But the other reason for the multi-year recovery is that household wealth is at an all-time high. All-time high. And somehow you're shaking your head inside. That's not easy. And in fact, 90% of Americans say they're nowhere near this. 10% of Americans are feeling it, 90% are not feeling it. This increase in household net worth is all coming from the stock market. Stock market is at record high. And if one looks at who has ownership in the stock market or who has investment in the stock market, it's essentially 10% of Americans. 90% have either very minimal or non-existent investment in the stock market. Therefore, when you see this data of 90 all-time high household net worth, it's only benefiting the 10%. But nonetheless, 10%, the top 10% are the ones who buy vacation homes. And as a result of that, we anticipate that vacation home sales will be rising. I know in some areas like Asheville, North Carolina, they will benefit from this trend. I don't know what the situation in Chattanooga in terms of vacation home sales, second home sales, but you have beautiful mountains. And maybe some people will consider, or some community home builders beginning to cater towards the retirement or resort destination possibility, because vacation home sales are primed to increase because top 10% of the families are really benefiting. Meantime, the housing start still remains sluggish, even though it is improving. So this increase in inventory is coming from the home builders, but one can see that it is well below the long-term average, even with a recovery. In fact, this home housing start needs to increase by 50% just to get us back up to the historical line. So it's a recovery, but it's a very, very sluggish recovery. Chattanooga situation looks like this. So that's how many homes were built each year. And now one can see for like 6 or 7 consecutive years underperformance. But with the inventory level going down and down, existing home inventory, it's just inevitable this has to increase. And in fact, many home builders are already saying they want to build more. However, they cannot build more. So they want to build, but they cannot. And why not? They cannot obtain construction loans. Or the empty lot that was already out there, it was already taken up by a large builder. So now they have to start all over fresh, and it's much difficult to start from fresh. So one thing that has happened in the home building industry that is completely new, I mean, for the realtors, I mean, it's been a difficult market, challenging market, now it's recovering, but for home builders, it was a devastating market. I mean, it was total crunch. And fundamentally, the industry has also changed because what you have is that large builders are taking advantage of the fact that the small builders are out of the game. Small builders need that loans from local banks. That's been the historical case, where local builders work with local lenders, obtain the construction loans, build a home, sell it, repay the loan, and so forth. But construction loan availability is very, very difficult, while the big builders, they don't need loans. Big builders don't need a loan. They just go to the Wall Street, raise stocks and bonds, and then use that money to start building homes. So one dynamic that has changed in the home building industry is that large builders like Toll Brothers, Lennar, KB Homes are taking advantage of the fact that small builders are shut out of the game. And why are the small builders shut out of the game? Well, cost of construction is rising rapidly, but that should also impact big builders. There's a labor shortage. Big builders are able to outbid the small builders for labor. And the other part is that construction loan difficulty is that many lenders are saying we don't do construction loans anymore because of all this regulation related to Dodd-Frank. If we were to do it, someone from Washington will visit and they want to open our books and we don't want to be bothered with all that hassle, and therefore we don't want to do construction loans. So right now, that many small builders are feeling constrained, while the big builders, knowing that small builders are out of the game, are just taking advantage of the fact that's happening. So we've been working with the National Home Builder Association to assure that more loans become available or not make it any excessively difficult if there's a regulatory change. That is the reason. So anyway, through all this, the bottom line on housing forecast is that multi-year recovery. So home sales, let me see, the middle column, existing home sales, 5.1 million last year. This year, slightly lower because of the weak first half. Chattanooga, you may actually come out even because June figures were very strong, and if that's an indication for the rest of the year, you may actually come ahead in 2014 versus last year. But going into next year, even in a rising interest rate environment, there's pent-up demand, job creation that will easily overcompensate for the rising interest rates, and therefore more home sales and more housing starts occurring. Final forecast is less on the market condition, but more social commentary. Is that I believe that we are entering a more unequal wealth distribution. And for different reasons than what economists would say or what people in Washington would say. It's all housing related. Here's the charts. This is the rental population in America. This is homeowner population in America. So let me just go back and forth one more time. Rental population, homeowner population, which is the reason why you see the data, home ownership rate is falling and falling. And then here's the data from the Federal Reserve that shows the net worth of renters versus homeowners. For renters, they have only about $4,000 on net. Money in the bank, their automobile, and how much do you have? Typical renter has about $4,000. And it doesn't change from one year to the next. It's always appeared to be stuck. For homeowners, they have substantially more. Some homeowners may be underwater, so zero, but other homeowners own their home outright, no mortgages, that's all their equity. And when home values change, then their equity increases more. Now you are in a rising home price environment. So you combine these three charts, this chart, and this chart, and automatically you get more unequal wealth distribution in the country, irrespective of what they want to do in Washington. So as long as they prevent good renters from converting into ownership because of tight underwriting standards or potential lawsuit threat to the lenders and others, we will continue to face this situation where many good renters who become successful owners are prevented because of the very, very tight underwriting standards. Finally, just to give you a little hints about all the other research that we do, we take survey of, for example, home buyers and ask them, what do you look for in a home? Do you really want a single family home? You are indifferent, and what's the case? We're finding a slight increase in desire for condominium living. It could be the millennial generation. Some people are thinking ahead, maybe this downtown area of Chattanooga, maybe this is what they're looking for. The other thing they were looking for, aside, let me just stay with the prior chart, is that walkability. You know, certainly this downtown area gives that walkability feel for at least some people who desire it. But this is a very small segment of the information that we collect. So for other information, you know, you are welcome to go to our website. What do buyers most want from their agent? And even in this high-tech world of easy-to-find home through the internet, most people are saying the home that I found was not through the internet. It was something that my realtor showed. Because home that you found through the internet may already be under contract or all these other issues, but what they really value is the realtors really found them the home that they actually bought. Others, you know, helping in the negotiation, another part, but it's really about finding the right home. Where do clients come from? When we ask realtor members, where do your business come from? They're all saying largely from referrals. And then where do buyers go for their realtors? They're saying from their referral from friend and family. Sellers, very similar. They were referred to by a friend or family. And look at the very last bullet point. 2/3 of buyers and sellers only contact only one agent. And the reason why they contact they're not in real estate. Yeah, they're trying to find something else. But in real estate, they're saying they only contact only one person is because everything that clients know home buying process is complex. So in this complex problem, they can either become expert in everything, or they can say, I trust my realtor. So what they're looking for is that trust. And if the recommendation comes from a reliable source, they're saying, okay, my person's made that recommendation, I only need to have that one agent and no one else. So this is what the consumers are telling us, which means from your point of view, you have to serve your clients well to assure that you get their referrals. And also for many newcomers who are into the industry, expect difficult years in the first couple of years because you don't have that referral base, but you will build over time because people who have been in the industry longer, they have the more referral base. So with that, thank you for your patience, and you can go to our website, we have more information on our things. So thank you for your patience, and thank you very much.
Turn this on real fast. Dr. Yoon said that he would be willing to take some questions. Does anyone have any questions for him?
Okay. I know that I went over in my time because my timer went over, so I'll take 3 questions. So
there you go.
One question, any second question? Second question in the back? Yeah, it's just the first. Second question and the third question. Final. Okay, well, let's just go.
There's one right there.
Okay, so 1, 2, and 3. Okay, lady first.
Is it a good time to then have rental property, to own rental property?
It's a good time to own a rental properties. So people always ask me, is it a good time to buy or sell, or that question. And what do I do with my money? Do I put it in the stock market and so forth? So I have 401k. I'm one of the fortunate ones to have 401k. So that every time there's some contribution, I just leave that alone because I just want to see what's happening in the retirement. But any additional savings that I have, I'm looking to buy rental property. So that's my own personal decision regarding that. And the trend right now is that rents are rising, but here locally, it all depends on the job. So if job creation can accelerate, become something like Nashville, then you can really see the rents rising much, much faster. So gentlemen in the back.
Actually, 2 questions. You projected a 40% increase in housing start between this year and next year. How is that going to, with the workforce available, do you see that as a real possibility? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, what year do you forecast the end of this bubble?
So I don't think this is a bubble. First,
the end of this
expansion. So it's hard to say. So when I say multi-year recovery, this is how I believe the multi-year recovery. So in the next 5 years, 4 of those 5 years should be an improving year for you. which means that whatever you had last year, most likely you will have better conditions, so 4 of the next 5 years will be good. I put 1 year caveat because economic data never moves in a straight line. Now regarding the housing start 40% increase, percentage-wise that's the case. In the past, when housing start recover, it was not uncommon to see 70% increase in 1 year, 80% increase, so 40% is easily doable. However, you raise a very valid issue about labor shortage, because here's an anecdote from a very hot market in Naples, Florida. A police officer, he wants to build a new home for himself. So he signed a contract and said, I want to build a home in this empty lot, so he signed that contract. After a few weeks and months, he decided to have a look at his homes. You know, it's a normal thing for an owner to have a look. This time, however, he came after work in his police cruiser, and as soon as he came, the workers who were working there scrambled like crazy. So the key home builders say, never ever visit this home in your police cruiser. Which means that it's implying that it's hard to discuss, but it's the reality that there are many undocumented workers working on construction sites. And with the border very tight now compared to before, at least regarding construction workers, that could be an issue as to, and it's very unfortunate, by the way, as why Americans cannot work in the construction, because construction workers, their salary level is higher than the average. But just how it is, home builders are finding it very difficult to find domestic workers to claim the dirt. I think that's just the case. So that's a very valid issue regarding the labor situation. So again, how long will this last? Is it going to be 5 years, 7 years? Hard to say, but I think comfortably 4 of the next 5 years, it should be an improving year. Final question in the back.
Yes, what is your opinion of the Zillow and Trulia phenomenon? And what are your recommendations for NAR and Realtor.com to compete with the huge increase in the numbers of the public that are going to Zillow and Trulia as their website of choice?
A very good question. Because 2 weeks ago, Zillow announced that they are merging with Trulia. And if one looks at the market value of Zillow and Trulia combined, it is about $8 billion. Realtor.com, or Move, the operator of Realtor.com, their market value is less than $1 billion, which means that Wall Street is betting money towards Zillow and Trulia to be the winner in this game. So that's what they are betting. Now, what's going to happen? Well, first, before speculating about what will happen or what should be a Realtor.com position or NAR position and so forth, we should all welcome innovation in American technology and a different way of doing business. When RE/MAX first came out, it was completely new, and people said, "Oh, how in the world can RE/MAX come out with this strange business model?" Well, it became accepted. So we always encourage new innovation, new process. Now, Zillow and Trulia market valuation of $8 billion, and you have to say, okay, where are they going to get the revenue? Premium agent and also so. And one can do the math, and there's no way that they can justify their market value at $8 billion just on that advertisement revenue from premium agents. So Zillow and Trulia probably has to go seek out revenue a different way. Only way to justify that. What would be a different way? Maybe they try to bring in more mortgage type of referral business, I don't know. But other way, possibly it could be that something that was mentioned one time a couple of years ago, which Zillow now adamantly deny, which is to go after realtor commissions. So once they capture realtor audience into their tent, they said, well, now you have to start giving me some referral fees. So whatever income you have now, maybe 1/3 goes to Zillow. Or maybe this business model never works out because realtors are very footloose. So as soon as they, I am willing to be premier agent, but as soon as you go after my commission, forget it, I'm running away. So that $8 billion market value could be very loose in terms of the shakiness of that market value. I'm speculating this because sometimes there's a little tweet up that Lawrence Yun said this at this meeting or something like that, and Zillow picks it up, and then Zillow will send me a note to say, Here's video from Spencer Restaurant, which is their CEO, talking on CNBC to say that he will never go after realtor commission. And my response to that is, I'm glad that he's thinking this way, but future business decisions are always determined not by current plans, but by future events. And we don't know what the future events are. So Zillow could say one thing now, but things could develop differently later. So the bottom line is we always welcome innovation and market dynamics. I'm not sure how all this thing will settle down. Realtor.com is run by this company called Move, which is not NAR, but that NAR signed a contract with Move to run the Realtor.com. So we'll see how all this thing develops. So it's very dynamic, fluid, a lot of competition situation.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Yoon, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I certainly appreciate your being here today. And I think that I can speak on behalf of everyone here in saying that your presentation was very informative and very insightful. Thank you again for coming to Chattanooga. On behalf of the Association of Realtors and the Home Builders Association, thank you all for being here. Have a great afternoon.